Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Let me start by reassuring you we will not be doing working groups again today. We had a small snafu with the Alumni Center, so we're just enjoying this setup a little bit more than normal. Okay, the meeting of the Faculty Senate will come to order. Welcome, everyone. If you have not already had time to do so, please make sure to check in using your mobile ID app so you get credit for attendance. If you're having difficulty, you can check in with the folks at the desk or Judy after the meeting. For our colleagues connecting from a distance, please begin your response with Potomac State or WVU Tech. So hopefully we're all set there. Potomac State, how many are present?
Potomac State has 3 present today, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. And at WVU Tech, how many are present?
WVU Tech has 3 senators present.
Thank you, ma'am. We appreciate that. And that gives us a quorum for the day, so we are official. All right, the minutes of the previous meeting have been distributed as an annex to your agenda. Are there any additions or corrections to the meetings from the December meeting? Okay, hearing none, the minutes are approved as written. I've been told that the president is in a holding pattern on a phone call somewhere, so we'll move more directly to remarks from Provost Joyce McConnell, and hopefully the president will join us relatively soon.
Thank you, everyone. Gordon got stuck on a call, so he asked me to sub for him, and fortunately I have a copy of his remarks. I don't wear a bow tie. I wish I did. It'd be a lot easier to get dressed in the morning and look fancy, right? Don't they? I think they do. But anyway, so my poor substitute for a bow tie are pearls. So the first thing that Gordon wanted me to talk to you about was the governor's State of the State address, which was January 9th, last Wednesday. I'm sure you all don't remember that I broke my elbow exactly a year ago, January 9th, and so it was a traumatic day for me to be at the Capitol because that's where it happened. So I happened to be at the Capitol for the State address, and the governor, Jim Justice, did stress the importance of education to the state and essentially said it's our ticket out, right? It's our ticket to making things better, and obviously he's absolutely right. So he called for it to be the centerpiece of our future, adding that it represents the hot spot that can really change our image. Obviously, if we really could escalate the number of people who graduate from 4-year programs and really begin to diversify the economy, we could really start to turn things around, and that's what we're hoping to do. We certainly have a lot geared up in that direction. This year we have a surge in state revenue, which is great. It does not mean we will be getting any more in our budget, but it does mean that the governor is optimistic and he is adding $150 million in new revenue to PEIA to shore it up. What that means for each of us individually, I don't know, but I assume that it may at least hold down an escalation of premiums and perhaps an escalation in co-pays. He also proposed to expand the Promise Scholarship Program to include vocational education. And I don't exactly know the scope of what he means by that. Obviously, a lot of our vocational education happens at the community college level, but it also happens in other kinds of contexts. So, I'm not sure how broad he wants the Promise Scholarship to apply. He also stated publicly that he will be increasing salaries for public school teachers once again this year, especially in math, science, special education, and other areas where the state is having trouble filling vacancies. So we'll have to see, obviously, when the governor gives his State of the State, you have to wait for the entire session to see what unfolds. It's a 60-day session, so we'll see probably toward the end of March. We'll have a lot better idea of how all of this gets played out. For those of you who always are attentive about Campus Carry, we don't know what's going to happen this session. We do know that the NRA and the Citizens Defense League, as they have every year, have said this is the year that they have the votes. So we're actively down there talking to the Speaker of the House, who is one of our alums, Roger Hanshaw, and who was an extension, also a law student at one point, and has a PhD, I believe, in physics, although I could be wrong about that. You know? Chemistry. Roger will be helpful to us on Campus Carry. And the person who is the chair of the House Judiciary Committee, John Schott, was very helpful to us last year. So we continue to talk to Roger and to John Schott and all of our supporters. And we do have a lot of supporters in the House of Delegates. So that is really wonderful news, and we'll keep working on that. I think all of you saw the great news that we once again were ranked, or we were classified by Carnegie as a research of the highest, very high research. And that means we've maintained what used to be called R1 status, and we're delighted at that. They're not going to start their review process again, I think, for another 2 years, and then they publish it in 3 years. So we just have to keep monitoring. This time, just to let you know, this is not a passive pursuit on the part of the university. We work very hard, along with Fred King, the VP for research, to make sure that we're putting all of the pieces together that we need to put together to make our case. So we're happy with that. The one area where we do see that we could obviously, in addition to funded research, the other area where we see where we could really be making a difference would be to increase the number of PhDs we produce. And obviously, for those of you sitting in the room, you're all responsible for that, so keep that in mind. Our PhD production really matters. The other thing, Carnegie ranking that we're working on right now, which also is a big process, is the Carnegie classification for a community-engaged university. And we have had that designation. I'm confident that we will be able to get it again as long as they don't change any of the criteria. I can't think of very many universities in the country that are more engaged than ours, but it's a matter of putting the package together and making sure that we're doing what we need to do. In terms of the research ranking, just so you know where this places us, this puts us in the top 120 of the nation's 4,500 universities. So that puts us in a really good place reputationally. And what Gordon wanted me to say was that getting to the top is easier sometimes than staying there. So we have to be ever vigilant in making sure that we're continuing to do as much funded research as we possibly can, and that we're producing PhDs and doing all of the other things that help us keep that status. One thing that I'm very proud of is we only are Research 1 because of all of you. We have an amazing faculty, and what we do on our side is prepare the package and accumulate all the data, but you're in there every day making it happen. And I want you to know how much I appreciate it. For those of you who wonder sometimes whether it's worth being a Research 1, I know that there are many people who understand why it's so important. For those of you who may not be in a discipline where it is as significant to you, one thing I will remind you of is that it makes a huge difference in terms of our reputation, both nationally and internationally, and then, of course, that affects enrollment, and enrollment means everything. So it's very important that we continue to do that. Our students obviously get better and better every year. It's kind of extraordinary, and this year they've been doing wonderful work and competing successfully for many prestigious awards. One of our student entrepreneurs will be learning how to grow his business in Hong Kong. His name is Demetrius Jones, and he received a Gilman. He's majoring in entrepreneurship and innovation in the Chambers College of Business and Economics. He'll attend Hong Kong Baptist University in the spring semester. He's a first-generation student, and he's very eager to be learning about global markets. So this is huge for him and wonderful for us. And in addition, doctoral candidate Claudia Flores Saviaga has won a 2019 Facebook Emerging Scholar Fellowship, which is really wonderful. And she's going to be working with them on something that will not surprise you, which is how to limit the spread of false information, something we've been reading a lot about. Just some other brief notes. We had another leadership change at WVU Tech, and for those of you who are representing Tech on the screen, thank you so much for all of your support. Joan Neff, who is the provost, has moved into the position of interim president because Jerry Lang, who was serving as interim president, retired. And Carolyn Long, who was the president, is serving as we speak as the chancellor of the Higher Education Policy Commission at the state level. And Joan is really, truly wonderful for any of you who haven't met her. She's a true higher education dedicated, committed person who's worked her entire career, mostly in administration, although she started as a faculty member, and she's just lovely and really has the best interest of WVU Tech and WVU at heart. So thank you all very, very much, and we will see how the meeting goes from here on, and I'm happy to take any questions. Should I do that? Take any questions from any of our sites? Kaiser, any questions?
No questions, ma'am.
Okay. Hey, how are you all?
Doing well, ma'am.
Good. Okay, and how about Beckley?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. And looks like your number swelled to 4 from 3.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
I have a question or more like an information because recently it was brought to my attention that when we travel, we have to use the site to handle our travel needs. And I was wondering whether we have more information about the site because it looks like we have to fill out all kind of information, including passport number, social security number. The company is located overseas. And I was wondering what is the status or can you give us more information?
That's very, very interesting. I am aware of the new system. I was not aware. Oh, you couldn't hear the question? Okay. There may be someone else in the room who can actually answer it. The question is that the university is raising a new platform for travel and asking all faculty and administrators to use this platform. The concern is that it asks for some very personal identifying information like social security numbers, and that apparently the company that hosts the platform is not a US-based company. So the question is, could I provide additional information? And the answer is I cannot, but it may be, it is possible that one of our associate provosts or vice provosts may be able to. No? I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you, Barb. Okay, we'll report back. Thank you for raising the question, though. I have also been asking questions about it, so thank you. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I guess we're still waiting for President Yee, so I'll move on in the agenda. So I'll do my report here today. I'm sorry to start my remarks off with some sad news, but we should note the passing of Alan Stoltenberg, who was a towering figure in the Senate, in the West Virginia University Senate. He passed in December. He was instrumental in assisting the Senate as both a chair and as a faculty secretary over his years here. We literally wouldn't be here where we are today without his help. This is the first chance I've had to note his passing. As I said, it was before the previous, or after the previous Senate meeting. I would ask you all to wish me and sending condolences to his family and all the rest. They set a fund up for donations. If anyone's interested, we can send that information around. If anyone is interested in that information, I won't give it out here. But you're welcome to ask me afterward, and we can probably send it out as well afterward. But just, he was, for those of you who've known him, he was a tremendous figure in the Senate, and it's a real loss to the community, but obviously a loss to everyone around him. All right. Hopefully you all got my email from Friday. As I've mentioned before, the Board of Governors is still working on the BOG governance rule on ethics, conflict of interest, and outside consulting arrangements. What we think is the final iteration of those rules is now out, and this version incorporates some, at least, of the comments that the faculty made back through December. I believe they said they got something like 40 to 50 comments in total, and they claim to have addressed them all. So I sent out the version that included all of the changes they made to the previous version you saw in December. I would once again ask that if you do any consulting or work outside the university, paid work outside the university, you take a look at this version. There is still some very narrow window here that you have to influence this process. They've asked for some comments here at the end. So if you take a look at that and it still is confusing to you and still doesn't make sense to you in terms of what you're supposed to do with your outside consulting and other things, please email me or Matt Valenti or Stan Heilman, he's here somewhere, and we'll get the comments to the Board of Governors. Board of Governors meets the tail end of this week. February 8th, all right. So we have a little bit of window here, but I think they want to get those comments within about a week so they can do whatever they need to do to prepare for the Board of Governors meeting. So again, if you're doing any outside consulting, any outside work at all, take a look at the last draft that Judy sent around to everybody. Again, if you're confused, please put comments in emails to me, Matt, or Stan, and we will make sure that they get to the Board of Governors and hopefully address whatever problems that you have at that point. Next up, I want to thank everyone for participating in the working group session that we did at the Senate meeting back in December. The GEF committee got some very valuable information, I think, from that session and has started to work on a report sort of on what we envision the next general education sort of curriculum to look like. I know it helped in the discussions. I was in a GEF meeting and we used it. We pushed a poll out to everybody asking sort of what you thought of the sessions. Please take your time to fill that in and let us know. I'd like to do another one. There's some other questions sort of floating around, so maybe the March or the April meeting. But again, it depends on sort of how well it went over with you folks in the Senate. So please give us the feedback as best you can, and we'll work towards doing that in the future if it's something that folks seem to enjoy. Worth announcing that nomination ballots will go out for the next term, for the next group of senators within about a week for the new class of senators. I'd encourage all of you folks to think about nominating your colleagues, think about some of the folks around you in your departments and your classrooms and other places, folks who are engaged in the university community who you think would make good senators. Please approach those folks, or don't, and just nominate them anyway. We would love to get a good group of working senators here, and we depend on the current crop of senators to sort of help us move us forward. I'd also note that also means we're moving into the Senate leadership elections. I don't think that will happen in February, but starting in March and into April, we'll be looking at electing the new chair-elect, as Emily Murphy will step up to this position for next year, but we'll elect her successor at the tail end of this year. So folks might want to give some thought to who they, if they are willing to or interested in serving as the Senate chair. We'll be moving into that process again sometime in the next month or so. That's pretty much it for me. Again, we lack a president, but we'll keep moving forward. Let's move on to the curriculum committee report with the new chair, Ed Bernades, who's stepping in for Kim Floyd.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
I have for your approval annexes 1, 2, 3, and 4. And if it pleases the chair, propose to vote them in block.
Yeah, so we'll probably move all these together, all the 4 approval items into a single votable measure. Again, there's a new courses report, a course change, deletion, and adoptions report, a capstone courses report. There's a new degree program for Potomac State, and then the meaningful midterm grades policy, which flows out of the BOG report, a rule that requires midterm grades to be given to a certain class of students. Are there any questions or points of discussion for Annexes 1 through 4 and the new program? Okay, all those in favor of approving Annexes 1 through 4 and the new program, please say aye. All those opposed say nay. Potomac State, how do you vote?
Potomac State has 2 ayes, sir.
Thank you. WVU Tech, how do you vote?
WVU Tech has 4 ayes.
Thank you, ma'am. The ayes have it. Annexes 1 through 4 and the new program are approved. Okay, next up.
Thank you.
Thank you. Robert Brock and a report from the General Education Foundation.
Hi. We have one annex, and I can't remember which one it is now, which is
5.
perfect. 5, Annex 5 for approval.
Okay, so GEF Actions, Annex 5. Are there any questions or points of discussion for Annex 5? Okay, all those in favor of approving Annex 5, please say aye. All those opposed say no. Potomac State, how do you vote?
Potomac State has 2 ayes, sir.
Thank you. WVU Tech, how do you vote?
WVU Tech has 4 ayes.
Thank you, ma'am. The ayes have it. Annex 5 is approved. And a couple for information items.
Yes, the GEF transition review, which is Annex 6, and the working group results, which you can look through, I guess. Annex 7.
Okay, yeah, so the results from the working group last time are sort of, Judy put them together and put them into one file, so anyone who's interested in sort of seeing what came out of that, you're welcome to take a look at that annex. Okay, these are 4 information items. No vote is needed. Are there any questions or points of discussion for the GEF transition review and or the working group results? Okay, so hearing none, those things are filed. Thank you, sir. Next up, report from the Teaching and Assessment Committee from Ashley.
Hi, the Teaching and Assessment Committee is meeting on Wednesday of this week, but right now we are in contact with Engineering and Child Development to report on our initial stage of syllabus review.
So we'll have a bigger report next time. Thank you. All right, next up, faculty representative to state government, Roy Nutter, who went the wrong way and has to come around to the microphone.
Trying to keep up with your super accelerated schedule here.
I can slow it down if you want me to.
Amazing. I'm Roy Nutter, Statler College, and your ACF legislative rep, or whatever we want to call that nowadays. As you're aware, the legislature opened about a week ago, I guess. And what they've been doing is bill introductions, and best I can tell, not a lot other than that, but they're putting a lot of bills in the hopper. And looking through them, I came up with 4 that raised my eyebrows a little. I just received, as I came in, the HEPC's evaluation. There's about 24 on the list from the House and probably near that many from the Senate. The ones that you are probably interested in is the introduction of the concealed weapons on campus. That's House Bill 2032. There's a couple of others that, and you got to understand, once these bills go in, they could die right there. You never know what's going to happen to them till the committees move them. But there's another one on expanding the amount of promised scholarship funds awarded to persons majoring in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. then there's another Promise one, expiring the Promise Scholarship Program and establishing Promise for All Scholarships program. Don't ask. There's also one creating a loan tuition forgiveness program to encourage students selected necessary fields to remain in the state. So this is kind of one of those things that's just, the bills are introduced depending upon the committees and probably more upon the chair of the committees as to whether they move. The next step as far as my input, I plan to not be at the next Senate meeting. I just sent Dave an email and he cheered. But it's Higher Education Day at the legislature, January 28th. So I will be down there that day and shaking hands and smiling a lot and trying to act like I know what's going on. But that will be the day for Higher Education Legislature. And we may have an ACF meeting that day. So ACF, let's see, what's going on with them? It's mostly worry about the committee that President Gee is chairing. I think it's a lot of concern. I'm hoping he gets here before you adjourn so we can learn what's happening. I do have some information on the reports that's been filed. If you're interested, send me an email and I'll be happy to send it to you. Report complete.
Okay. Thank you, Roy. Next up, Board of Governors report from Stan Heilman.
Okay, so the Board of Governors met briefly before the December graduation. We did vote to release for comments Governance Rule 11.1, which is rules regarding information technology resources and governance. There was also Finance and Administration Rule 5.6, which guards the tobacco and smoke-free campus. Some of you have probably read some things, saw some things about that. It expands it beyond just smoking to vaping and e-cigs, so that's caused some comments. We approved a new graduate certificate in leadership and approved a new degree program in learning sciences and human development. And as Dave mentioned a little earlier, the next meeting will be on February 8th, and I assume that's probably the meeting where the rules about consulting and stuff will come up for permanent approval. So, like he said, if you do have comments, please send them. If you still have questions, Stephanie and the folks down there, I'm sure, are still available to answer any questions you have about specific situations or whatever. So just get in touch with one of us or somebody.
Stan, is the new smoking rule, has it gone into effect yet, or is it still being discussed?
I think that rules is out for out for comment. So I don't think that has been voted on yet.
So we should encourage folks, if you have any interest in commenting on that rule, which is going to substantially change, as noted, it's going to add vaping and other things to the banned practices on campus. You should certainly go on the Board of Governors site and put comments in for that as well.
Yeah, and I know Stephanie and have gotten a significant number of comments, some of it revolving around, enforcement of the rule is what a lot of the comments kind of deal with, whether it can or how it will be enforced, but that's something that they're working on.
Okay, thank you, sir. Is there any new business? But I hear the provost wants to come back up and polish off a few things that the president was not able to do. Is that okay? Sure, have that.
So the Blue Ribbon Commission, I think that's what got raised. So Gordon is, as you know, chairing the Blue Ribbon Commission. It has completed the initial phase of its work. It has draft legislation that will transform the Higher Education Policy Commission from actually being a policy commission with some control over a vast area of work that we engage in, and will actually take away a lot of that authority, and it will become a service organization that the smaller institutions can belong to and subscribe to the services that are available. So example, many of the small institutions do not have their own lawyers on site, so they use the Higher Education Policy Commission legal office to be able to answer questions. Same with HR. So there may be some kinds of services that the smaller institutions will want to continue to use. They also will continue to do things like process the promised scholarships, which they do now, be a funnel for some federal funds, which they do now. So any of the services, but they will not be a policy-making body in the way that they have been in the past. At least that's what's proposed in the legislation. The legislative process in drafting it was one that was actually very inclusive. The people who were on the governance subcommittee on the Blue Ribbon Commission represented many of the small institutions. Those representatives went to the presidents of all of the small publics in West Virginia and asked what services they thought they needed. They came up with an extensive list, and the legislation was shaped to meet that list of identified needs. So we're optimistic. There remains, as you said, Roy, a lot of concern about whether this is West Virginia University wanting to take over all small public schools in West Virginia. And I can tell you that I speak not only for myself, but for the university and for the president, which is we have no interest in taking over the small schools. We feel like we have plenty on our plate with our campuses in Morgantown, Kaiser, and Beckley. And we have no intention of trying to interfere or, as I said, take over in any way any of the other schools. The one school that has reached out to us that just wants to talk about more collaboration is WVU Parkersburg. And for those of you who are relatively new to Faculty Senate, you may be confused by the fact that they actually have the name WVU Parkersburg. They were once part of WVU, and then when the community college system was created, they were taken out of WVU, but they were permitted to retain the name. And so this has been an ongoing conversation, but they have a new president who's absolutely wonderful, and he is interested in collaborating with us. And so that's a wonderful thing. Now that I have this platform, I did want to tell you that we're very excited about the new football coach, which I assume you all are. So he's doing great stuff already, and we're really happy about that. I did have a few other things to announce. Is that okay if I just go on a roll? But I promise to be fast, because now you all expect to get out of here. I know, if you and freedom, that's right. So for those of you who did not realize it, Intensive English moved back to World Languages, Literature, and Linguistics in the Eberly College. I talked about this the last time. We're starting new digital learning awards. If you want to know more about that, let me know. We're also starting an undergraduate research mentoring awards program, so many of you are doing great work either in the digital space or mentoring undergraduate researchers. And we're developing a graduate research mentor award for those of you who are mentoring graduate students. The Idea Hub, which is the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Network, is seeking new fellows for its next series of programs. These fellows go to Babson College, get trained, work with a team on creating an interdisciplinary innovation and entrepreneurship class, work together for a year, and get a stipend for doing that. So if you're interested in that kind of work, let us know. We're working on Research Week. Research Week is expanded from just long-form scholarship to actually focusing on all types of research that are done at WVU. And during that Research Week, we will also have a day in which we both celebrate and learn more about Fulbrights. We really want to encourage our faculty to take advantage of the Fulbright program, and so we'll make that something that we feature. I think I told you this, though, that 2 history faculty got NEH fellowships. Did I announce that at the last one before we left? No? Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about that. Catherine Al-Listad and Tamba Mabayo of the Department of History will each receive $60,000 from the National Endowment for the Humanities for their work in history. So we're really, really thrilled about that. That's it. I think I've gotten through everything. Thank you.
Okay, is there any new business? Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn? Second? See you in a month.